Thank you for staying with us here on Nile TV International on The Breakfast Show. Time now for our touristic segment. And speaking about tourism, Nile TV International, since its inauguration way back in 1994, has been keen on endorsing this key industry for Egypt, this key source of foreign currency, this key source that employs millions of Egyptians in direct and indirect jobs. This beautiful industry that really portrays Egypt the way it is, Egypt, the mother of the world, as we say here in Egypt, the mother of all civilizations, Egypt, which has everything from cultural tourism, from religious tourism, from leisure tourism, and you name it. And since, again, Nile TV was born, tourism has been a key feature of its coverage. We've done a lot of documentaries about well-known places and remote and lesser-known places here in our beautiful country. We've had tourism ministers here on air. We've had our guests who consider Egypt their second country also on air. We've had coverage in the Red Sea area, in the Sinai area, in Cairo, of course, in Luxor, in the Western Desert, all across Egypt. And Nile TV continues to support the tourism industry in Egypt, especially in the midst of the fight against the global COVID-19 pandemic, as Egypt has already resumed domestic tourism up to 50% capacity now, and is resuming starting from the 1st of July, and according to international flights, international tourism. And as Egypt prepares for the opening of what shall be the greatest open-air cultural city in the world, not just museum, gem. So Nile TV continues to consider its role in supporting this key industry, an integral reason of its existence, and will continue to do so. We have with us now in the studio Egyptologist Samir Abbass, and we have all the pleasure to have him with us to talk to us about our beautiful country, and as we told you at the outset, dear viewers, to review the various religious paths in Egypt that we talked about in the prior episode, starting from the religion of ancient Egyptians, Prophet Ibrahim, the father of all holy religions, the trip of Prophet Moses in Egypt, the trip of the Holy Family, and of course Islam's journeys also in our beautiful country.
Sure. First of all, the pleasure is mine to be with you
Thank
today.
You, Mr. Abbass.
This topic is one of the very most interesting topics when it comes to the history of religion. Religion has its own history as well. Most of the believers, whatever, if they are Muslims, Christian, Jewish, or whatever, any other religion, they consider the religious book as their main reference of religion. But when you combine that with the history, how this religion has been evolved, that helps in filling many of the gaps in how people practicing the religion today. And that's why that was one of my main interests, to study history, so I can understand what happens in religion and why religion today is practiced in a specific way, which could be slightly different than how it was practiced when it was started back in that time, whatever it's Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. I was very lucky actually to be invited to talk about this topic in the last week when we talked about the role of Egypt, or the importance of Egypt as host of most of the practiced religion in planet Earth, and especially the religion which is of the three main religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We talked even about the ancient Egyptian religion and how the ancient Egyptian religion, possibly based on real God teachings, a prophet, a messenger was sent to the ancient Egyptians, and gradually they were keeping changing and adding and taking out of these teachings, and that's how the ancient Egyptian religion was ended, like in that looking. And we talked about the reformations, which is started by Akhenaten.
Yes.
And we dedicated like an entire, like 2 episodes or 3 episodes for that. And
Maybe he was a big supporter of monotheism.
Exactly, and that's how, and also, and then we talked about the advance of Judaism, and even before that, Abraham and monotheism, and the influence in the ancient Egyptian religion and history, and then going through Joseph and Moses, and then the Holy Family, Jesus' visit to Egypt, and finally Islam. So even Greeks and Romans, they invaded, they ruled Egypt, and they brought the religious teachings with them here as well. So, and that's encouraged me as, not as an Egyptologist, but as a tour guide.
Absolutely.
To put a practical, to put that in a practical way, to put a tour, like an itinerary, a tour programs on a history timeline.
We'll get to that, and as we understand, this is your intellectual property, so we'll get to that, and we want indeed to, we are eager to listen to the details of that proposed trip. But something really caught my attention while you were speaking, when we say that Egypt had, the religion of ancient Egyptians, Judaism was here, Christianity, Islam. This explains why Egypt is the land of tolerance. This explains why Egyptians, the number one characteristic that really labels Egyptians is tolerance. They are tolerant, loving people. And when we say that Nile TV International, for instance, supports and endorses tourism, tourism gets peoples closer together, gets cultures closer together. When we have our African brothers visiting us, our Arab brothers visiting us, our European or American or Japanese or Chinese or Latin American friends or Asian friends visiting us, this gets our cultures closer and our peoples closer, and makes the ground for peace, love and tolerance even
historically,
wider.
Historically it seems that misunderstanding when it comes to religion, that's led to a very big conflicts. And many of the conflicts, many people died, and like throughout the history, that was because of misunderstanding. So there is a gap between people of different beliefs. And the good thing about Egypt so this gap is very narrow, and people, they managed to narrow this gap. And that was the main thing in my mind, to find a solution to bridge the gap between different backgrounds. So let's go. Let's take
your intellectual property tour.
Exactly. Let's take you on a tour.
It hasn't been put in effect yet.
No,
so waiting
yet,
for the corona to end.
Yes,
I'm planning
to get this word
ongoing.
out, and that is the first step actually to get this word out.
Inshallah.
So this tour is 15 days.
15
days. So people, because tourists normally land in Cairo and finish in Cairo, so I started in Cairo, and I choose the step pyramid in Saqqara and Memphis as a start. So the step pyramid, as you can see actually on the screen now, so the step pyramid is the first pyramid ever built. It is the first example of how religious idea turns into a structure, a big one, magnificent, attracts the attention of people to specific religious teachings. When you look at the step pyramid today, you look at it as a tourist attractions, as a pyramid. But the ancient Egyptian, back in that time, they looked at the step pyramid as a giant staircase of the king's soul up to the heaven. And that's how the kings start promoting themselves as gods. And that was the core of the ancient Egyptian religion in that time. So also on the same day, we will go to Memphis. Memphis was the religious capital, that was the capital of Egypt, and also was the religious center of Egypt in that time. So Memphis has its own version of Genesis, of the book of Genesis, of the creation of earth, and which is documented, and we found that steles in Memphis explains how the ancient Egyptians believed in the creation story of the world, which is not much different than the book of Genesis in the Old Testament and the Quran as well. Then moving from Saqqara.
Memphis is Giza, right? In Giza?
Exactly. Memphis, is Saqqara, both of them to the south of Giza today. So then second day, we will go to Giza pyramids. Normally I don't put Giza pyramids as the beginning of an itinerary, because people, they need to understand how things evolved in Egypt to come to understand how the perfection of Giza pyramids. So in Giza pyramids, it's one of the greatest examples how the kings built amazing pyramids, which is wrongly understood as burials or tombs. No, that wasn't the main reason of building these pyramids. Yes, it was used as tombs, but the main reason was to represent the idea of the sun rays of the sun reaching down the earth. Not only to put a very big building in the face of the people. These pyramids act like temples for them, like a pilgrim sites, to attract people's attention of how powerful religion is and how powerful their kings was. You can consider that the pyramids is the earliest brainwashing religious buildings in the history of mankind, because it was built in order to root the idea of the divinity of the kings, the pharaohs, in the mind of the people. Think on yourself as an ancient Egyptians, waking up in the morning and seeing these great pyramids on the high plateau reflecting the rays of the sun, which is almost touching the heaven, the sky.
Yeah.
That was the way of rooting this idea in their mind. And of course, we cannot miss the Egyptian Museum, if it is the gem or the like the old one. And in the Egyptian Museum, we can
We're still in the second day.
We can easily tell the whole history of Egypt, of ancient Egypt, in one go, and in like a quick brief history book. Then the third day, wake up in the morning, 6 a.m., put your bags together, and take a drive 4 hours to south of Egypt, more specific to Al-Minya Governorate. That's where you come to Bani Hassan, beautiful tombs on the high cliff overlooking the Nile River, had a very beautiful view over the Nile Valley and the Nile River. It seemed that the ancient Egyptians who choose this location, they liked the view, and that's why they built the tombs there. They believed in their soul would be living in these houses, and they wanted their soul to have this view every day.
That was the capital for Akhenaten?
That's later on. That is our next stop.
Yeah.
Okay, so in these tombs, we'll choose one tomb which is famous for a scene, possibly record the visit of Abraham, the biblical Abraham, to Egypt, and that's how we'll come across to Abraham teachings and biblical Abraham. And then in the same day, we will move slightly to the south, another half-hour drive or 45 minutes drive to Tel al-Amarna. And
still in the Minya Governorate.
Yes, and we talked actually in details about that in 3 episodes. How important Tel al-Amarna as a new capital of Egypt for promoting for monotheism versus polytheism in ancient Egypt, and there, it's the best location to tell how religious difference should happen. It should happen gradually, and that's how all of the successful religions, which is still practiced until today, the change happens gradually, not over time. But when Akhenaten decided to enforce the changes of religion, problems happens. He was killed, most probably he was killed, and his family disappeared, and the entire capital has been destroyed. And that was a very big lesson. Religion cannot be enforced.
True.
It should be gradually. So, and from Amarna, we will move south to Abydos.
We're still in the third day?
That's
the fourth day?
That is the fourth day now. We will be in Abydos. And Abydos is Mecca for the ancient Egyptians. It's Jerusalem for the ancient Egyptians.
Really?
Yes, Abydos is, even it is not well visited, Abydos is the most important pilgrim site for the ancient Egyptians. Abydos is the burial place for Osiris. Osiris was the god of the afterlife for the ancient Egyptians. There was almost every Egyptian who can afford making a pilgrim to Abydos. Now I'm mixing between Mecca and Abydos.
Yeah.
So they will not hesitate to do that in their lifetime, and if they couldn't,
can we say like with each place the governorate it currently lies in?
That will be in Sohag.
Sohag.
Now, and from in Abydos we have beautiful temple built by Seti.
But why is it considered the Mecca or the Jerusalem?
Literally, the ancient Egyptians, they believed in the gate of the soul to the afterlife. There is 2 mountains there, and these 2 mountains, there is like depression in between. That is the temple of Seti I, which is completed by Ramses II in Abydos. There is 2 mountains in Abydos, and the sun sets in between of them, which is exactly like the gate to the afterlife in the ancient Egyptian religion. And that's why they consider that is the location where souls go to the heaven from this location.
Is that a place where one of the famous films of Omar al-Sharif and Fatin Hamama or something was taking place, or am I mixing things up?
I'm trying to remember the movie, but the movie I cannot remember exactly the location. It could be Karnak Temple
or a struggle in the valley.
I'm not quite sure. It was a long time since I saw this movie.
Okay.
So, and from Abydos, the following day, that will be like in day 5, we are moving a lot south. We are keeping moving south to Dandara.
Of course, in the midst of this trip, they are staying in hotels that
exactly,
exist in the areas.
Bus, with a very qualified tour guides. And also the important thing about this trip, it is not only like guide to people talking. No. In this trip, I already planned for a discussion, inner dialogues between people in this group, which has come from different backgrounds, so they can enrich each other. Not only, I invited the scholars from different backgrounds.
Wonderful.
Those who are specialized in ancient Egyptian religion and those who are specialized in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and many other topics of religion to give talks during
Wonderful.
that. So,
and the food, will it be like homemade, local food, so that they can maybe enjoy the food of the area?
Definitely, the cultural experience cannot be neglected in that. For example, in Saqqara, in the first day, I'll just make a quick jump to the first day. So in Saqqara, the lunch will be on a farm, a local farm, owned by a person, which is a friend of mine. But the interesting thing of him, he is crazy about the ancient Egyptian religion. He even like breeding the ancient Egyptian dogs and planting papyrus and lotus in his farm, and that will be a way of showing that how the culture of the ancient Egyptian people is still practiced until today. In Saqqara also we will see the oldest written religious book in the history of mankind, in the pyramids of Unas in Saqqara. So then let's go back to
day
our
5.
timeline. That will be, I think, we are on day 6 now. So we will be in Dandara. Dandara is not known as built during the rule of the ancient Egyptian kings, but it was built during the Greeks and ruler kings by Egyptian hands and Egyptian priests. The amazing things in Dandara is the ceiling decoration, very well preserved, and gives you an idea of how the ancient Egyptians believed in the universe. The ancient Egyptians, they have solutions and they have thoughts about everything happens around, even the stars and planets and all that. And you can see that in the zodiac. When you go to look at the ceilings, your neck will really hurt at the end of this tour, because all of your visit will be keep actually looking at the ceilings. It shows you how the ancient Egyptian perspective of stars and planets. Then moving from Dandara, which is only 1 hour drive from Luxor. Luxor, we'll spend like 2 days there, which is one of the highlights of Egypt.
Absolutely.
The Valley of the Kings. And the Valley of the Kings, the beauty thing about the Valley of the Kings is the ancient Egyptian religious books, which used to be written in Saqqara and in the pyramids wall, the pyramid tickets, and written in the coffin tickets in the Middle Kingdom, that became illustrated in the Valley of the Kings. So you don't need to know hieroglyphics to know how the ancient Egyptian people used to think about religion in the afterlife. When you go inside the tombs, you see the illustrations, which explains how the afterlife looks like. And of course, we will not miss going to Deir el-Medina. Deir el-Medina is the opposite of
the Valley of the Kings.
Why? Because of the Valley of the Kings is all about kings and royal cult. Deir el-Medina about the local cults, like people like you and me, how they think about the afterlife and how they think about the paradise and what is the paradise looks like and what's qualifying people to make it to the afterlife. You will be surprised that many of the good values in our religion today, it was there back in that time. I'll just mention one thing. Don't pollute the Nile River. That's one of the religious codes of one of the religious rules of ancient Egypt. Don't look at your neighbor's wife. So we are talking a very idealistic religion. Right. And then I wish I have more time to talk about actually Deir el-Medina, but I'm just taking a glimpse, from one of each side. Then
and I'm sure because so far it's more been like about ancient Egypt and Prophet Ibrahim. So I'm sure that the remaining days will have Prophet Moses and Prophet Jesus.
Definitely. So in Karnak Temple, and Karnak Temple as the oldest religious structure in the ancient history, which is tolerates within Karnak temple walls, it complex itself, it was not only dedicated for one god, it was dedicated to many ancient Egyptian gods. And that's another lesson of the history of religion. You cannot enforce only one sect for everybody to follow. You have to be tolerant for all of the other sects or all of the other sects and views, and tolerate that. And that's how, that is the main secret of the ancient Egyptian civilization survived for more than 3,000 years. It was like,
very interesting point you're mentioning.
It was like Sunni and Shia and Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, all of them living together, and they shared the same complex with their differences. And that was the rule of the king, to keep the harmony and the balance between them. That's how the ancient Egyptian civilization survived.
Very interesting point.
Then moving to Aswan. And Aswan, we will stop at Itfwan.
That's your homeland, right?
Yes, that is my family origins come from there, exactly. And we'll stop by Itfwan Komambo, which is temples not built by during the ancient Egyptian kings, built during the rule of the Greek and Romans by Egyptian hands, Egyptian priests. But the interesting thing about the Greeks and Romans, when they came, they tried to change the Egyptian mind to fit their own character. But the opposite thing, what happens? They gave up. They couldn't. And finally, they decided to follow and worship the ancient Egyptian gods. And the kings, the pharaohs, you see it on the temples walls. They are not Egyptian pharaohs. They are Greek pharaohs dressed like the ancient Egyptian people. And that shows you how the ancient Egyptian religion had a very strong impact even on the invaders back in that time.
Absolutely, and we can see that until today. I mean, when the Greeks came for like 100 years ago or something, when they were living in Alexandria, or the Greeks, the Italians, or when they come here, they become Egyptian more than Egyptians. We'll be taking a so what day is that?
I think we are in days 8 or 9 now.
Okay. We still have like 6 days left. So, dear viewers, please stay with us. Mr. Samir and I will be back shortly to continue this beautiful journey. And until then, let's watch this touristic report by our Nile TV International specialist, Dina Yunus.
And go out to gather dry hay and herbs and palm reeds to be used as fuel during the feast. This condition lasts for 7 days, and on the 8th day they bring big quantities of salt from a certain suburb by the salty lakes. On the 9th day, everyone in the oasis is totally busy. Women clean the houses and put kalims and carpets and bed covers and blankets on the roof of their homes, while Zokala store the fodder for the cattle. Once the sun rises, and after holding the feast's prayer in the mosque, Muslims go back home to slaughter the rams. Instead of eating the best parts of the meat on the first day, like Muslims in the other places, they prepare this meal in a different way. They cut the hair of the ram's skin neatly. Then they cut that skin into long stripes. Then they cook it with olive oil, along with the heart and liver and kidneys in a pottery vessel. That's considered a very special way to celebrate Eid al-Adha's first day in Siwa. On the second day of the feast, the meal is composed of the head of the ram and its legs, and some parts of its guts. After that, meat is divided into sections, each of which weighs 1.5 pounds. A big share of this meat is distributed among relatives and the newly wedded girls of the family. After the Syrians eat as much as they can, in the afternoon of the second day, they cut the left pieces of meat into very small sections and mix them with salt and join them together with threads. They dry these threads of meat and store them until needed. They cook the rest of the meat with fat and store them in pottery vessels and seal them tightly with mud. By this way, they can preserve the meat for few months. This way of preservation is followed by the Bedouins in the desert when they are obliged to slaughter one of their camels. This well-preserved meat is called el-qadid.
Welcome back, dear viewers. Thank you for staying with us. You're still with Egyptologist Samir Abbass talking about the proposed trip of his intellectual property about a religious past in Egypt, a 15-day trip. We had reached Aswan. I think it's day 8 or 9 now.
Yes, you know, and in Aswan, we have two main stops. One in Aswan itself as a city and one in Abu Simbel. Abu Simbel, let's start with Abu Simbel first, because that's what I put actually in my program, because that's how we'll come across with the Nubian culture and the Nubian religion too. So the Nubians, they had their own religion, and which is gradually start adapting the ancient Egyptian religion back in that time, and then gradually Christianity, and finally Islam. The interesting thing when it comes to the Nubian culture is they put in their decorations, in their culture, in their house decorations, they put all of that together. When you go and see a Nubian house today, you will see the Ankh symbol of the ancient Egyptians on the wall of their temples, together with the cross, together with the crescent moon, and even their culture, they put baptism. They still practice baptism, you know, for the babies, you know, taking them, even Muslims, they do that when they take to the Nile River. And that's why the Nubian community look at them, looking at them and visiting them, that would be a very rich idea of how religion can influence people practice today. The interesting thing that most of the Nubians, they think that these practices come from Islam and these symbols come from Islam, but no. Ancient Egyptian, Christianity, baptism, and then Islam's, and even African traditions, traditional African religions too. Abu Simbel is one of the best examples of a building built on a Nubian land by ancient Egyptian king and government in order to terrify, threaten, and brainwashing and introduce ancient Egyptian religion to the Nubian. This is the main purpose of Abu Simbel temple, and that's how we'll come across how the religion was used for political uses. The best example is Abu Simbel temple. So, and then moving back from Abu Simbel, going back to Aswan, there is a place in Aswan I loved it most, Elephantine Island, which is unfortunately again not well visited. The southern part, it lies in the heart of Aswan. The southern part of Elephantine Island.
There's a temple there, of course. There's a famous temple.
There is layers of temples. There is, you can tell the whole history of Egypt and the religion of Egypt based on only in this site alone. There is 3 or 4 layers of history from early dynastic period until Islamic period. Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom, Alexander, Ptolemies, Romans, Christian churches and monasteries and Islamic monuments all exist on this site. And from this site, we will take a walk to the middle part of the island. In the middle part of the island, that's where a genuine Nubian community living today. And we will visit a local museum built by a local Nubian family there. They were really great. Using only their basic efforts, their basic tools, their basic resources, they managed to create a catalog of ancient Egypt, of the Nubian culture in that time, and themselves explaining the Nubian culture that help you to understand how much the Nubian culture very much influenced from different religions through their history. And then from Aswan, we will take a flight back to Cairo. Once we land in Cairo, so even before going back to the hotel, we will take a short drive, 1 hour to Al-Sharqiyya, or 1.5 hours to Al-Sharqiyya.
Prophet Joseph there.
Exactly. That's how we'll come across to Prophet Moses and Joseph as well, because the Israelites, they lived there from Joseph's time and through Moses' time. And there we'll visit Tanis and the location.
What day are we in now?
So that's possibly day 11.
Okay.
And Tanis and the location of Per Ramasu. Per Ramasu, which is a city mentioned in the Old Testament. That's where the famous Exodus, the icon of the Old Testament stories, And the Quran as well, events happens in Paramisu. That's where Musa's being born and raised up. And that's where the Exodus starts. And understand.
Does it have an Arabic name, the city now? I mean, the place, does it have
it's called San al-Hagar today.
San
al-Hagar.
San al-Hagar.
It's called San al-Hagar. And it lies in a village to the east of the Nile of the Delta. So the location, the Arabic name is San al-Hagar today.
Okay.
So and also in Kontir, because Kontir is 30 kilometers away, but Kontir recently proved that that was the original location of the ancient capital of Paramisu before being removed or transported to San al-Hagar. We are talking about translocating an ancient Egyptian capital more than 2,000 years ago, 30 kilometers from Kontir, which is the modern name of the location today, into San al-Hagar, which is the modern name of the location of 10 years today. Then back again to Cairo. So when we come back to Cairo, our focus will be Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
The synagogues, the churches.
And guess what will be the best
mosques,
place to stop at?
The heart of the town, I mean.
Exactly, Cairo, old Cairo.
Yeah.
That's where we'll be able to visit the oldest synagogue, together with the oldest church, and across the street from them is the oldest mosque. All of them survive together in harmony. Or the buildings physically still existing.
How beautiful that is.
For more than 1,400 years, which is blowing away the fake theory about the conflicts between religion. It can happen, but not in Egypt. And even it happens even if it was happening in Egypt, it was exceptional. It was exceptions, not the norm.
Right.
In Egyptian character.
Right.
And also we will not miss the Matareya and the tree of Saint Mary. That which is received pilgrims, not only among Christians, among Muslims as well. Alike with Christians, go and visit El Matareya. And visiting the old churches of Old Cairo, which is Saint Sergius and Wachos, and the Hanging Church, the famous Hanging Church.
Where is Sinai? Where is St. Catherine?
That's 15 days. I have to compromise because if I let myself, my imagination to put everything, which is I think is related to the story, this itinerary should be 45 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff in Bahira as well.
Exactly. Everywhere in Egypt. So I compromise as much as I can in 15 days because the 15 days, 2 weeks is normally a kind of maximum time for people. They can take time free and go out on holidays. So, but if you'd like me to organize this tour for you, get yourself free for
I would love to be
45 days.
I would love to be in that trip. I mean,
even
and especially like you've really made me feel sorry that I haven't visited the Fayala temples, the Elephantine Island or the Elephantine.
Unfortunately, this is one of the very last sites, and many of the sites I'm mentioning is like a hidden treasures of Egypt.
Yeah, that seems like a treasure,
and that
real treasure.
Exactly, and that was another thing which is we need to talk about. I dedicated many episodes in the Nile TV to talk about the hidden treasures of Egypt, and hopefully we can attract people there. Anyway, so.
As we said at the outset, this is Nile TV's role. It's part of its role to uncover the hidden treasures in our beautiful country.
Exactly. So, and
every day there's a new discovery. Every day there's something new.
Exactly.
There's a new palace opening, reopening.
We are coming to this point. I didn't forget actually to talk about that. So now we came to an Amr ibn al-As mosque, and we'll come to the interesting story, which is one of my guests was asking me when I took them. They are from Christian backgrounds, like from American Christian backgrounds. When I took them to the churches, the synagogue, and explaining all that in the history, because that is part of my beliefs too, and then taking them to Amr ibn al-As mosque and telling them the Islamic history, and they were wondering, how come, which kind of religion you are following? Are you a Muslim, Christians, or a Jew? So when I told them that I'm a mix of all, they couldn't believe it, because that's exactly, there's only one religion, sent in different versions, whatever it is, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, and that is what I believe. And the interesting thing that was the first time for them to hear that, and that's why I believe that religious
simply because there is one source for all of these religions.
One God.
That's God.
One God. Exactly. So you can call him Yahweh, you can call him Allah, or God. Is only one name for one God. So, and that was my influence to create this tour, Interfaith Discovery, to help bridging the gap between different people of different backgrounds, and they understand how religion evolved from one source. Then after Amr ibn al-As Mosque, we will coming to the end now, which is the end of our tour. That will be day 14, and we will be visiting the City of the Dead in Cairo, which is another hidden treasures, and talking about the burial customs, and talking about the burial customs not only about the Muslims and the Christians as well, how much it is still influenced with the ancient Egyptian traditions. When people carry bread and food to the cemetery, there is nothing Christian.
Where exactly will you visit? I mean,
there is different old cemeteries. I like the one which is called Hosh el-Basha, or Imam al-Shafi'i one. Imam al-Shafi'i lies, it's called the Southern Cemetery as well. And it also brings the story of the awliya, or the Muslim saints, which is like Christian saints, and the idea comes from ancient Egypt as well, and you can connect the idea of worshipping saints, which is not mentioned by Jesus, not mentioned by Muhammad, but that was an influence again from the ancient Egyptian religion. And the burial customs of how the Muslims and Christians today, when their culture, when they go to visit cemeteries, influenced from the ancient Egyptian beliefs.
Really,
and taking offerings and food with them. There is nothing Christian in Islam talk about that, but it comes from ancient Egypt.
Egyptian
and then we'll come to the citadel, which is, that's now we are coming to Muhammad Ali and Salah ad-Din and his famous mosque, and the influence from Turkey and building.
Well, that's a place you can see all of Cairo from above. I mean, that's a place where when you're there, I mean, it's amazing how we can see virtually all of Cairo.
And that's exactly what was in Muhammad Ali's mind when he built the mosque at that time, in that place. There was no practical reason for building this mosque in that place, because there was other two mosques inside the citadel, which is big enough to house everybody in the citadel. But he wants to put a building like the ancient Egyptian people built pyramids on a high plateau in Giza. He wants to build a mosque on a high mountain so everybody can see and remember him as a great king. The same idea. Whatever, it is a pyramid, a church, synagogue, or a mosque.
I love the link you're making. Okay. We only have a couple of minutes left, so
let's go to the medieval Cairo and in Mu'izz Street, and how clusters of monuments in this street, and then Khan al-Khalili for people to do some shopping before they're going back home. And on their way to the airport, we'll make a stop in Baroun Palace.
Wow.
Yes, and that is this palace has been closed for a very long time. One of
just reopened now
exactly
these days.
Just and myself, I was dying, and I was like 15 years like driving this road, wants to step in. Now I can. Now everybody can. It is a very unique
I've been
structure.
there. Okay. I've been there. That was a number of years ago.
Yes. It is a unique structures, come from a completely different style, from Indian style, represent a different culture, a different religion. Even Buddhism influence as a religion. You can talk about when it comes to the history of religion here, which could not be neglected. With billions of people worshiping Buddhism, you cannot neglect that. With art, which is influenced from Cambodian temples there, which is built in the early of the 20th century, and that was another additions, a very new additions to religious interfaith discovery, which is not only include ancient Egypt, Judaism, Christianity, Greeks and Romans, Persians, Islam, but also include Buddhism.
Always love to listen to you. Good luck with your proposed trip. I think it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a big success. We hope we can get over this COVID-19 very soon, inshallah. And that shall be a very interesting trip for our lovely guests from all over the world, and for Egyptians as well.
And you are invited.
Thank you. I would love to be there. Thank you very much, Egyptologist Samir Abbass. Always a great pleasure to have you with us. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, sir. Thank you, dear viewers, for watching The Breakfast Show. On behalf of Shireen Adil and everybody here, this is Muhammad Abdurrahim, and this is goodbye.